Welcome. We are going to talk about the on-car brake lathe from ProCut. So today this is our simulation stand. This simulates that we have a rotor on a vehicle. Okay, so just imagine this is a vehicle sitting here with the rotor on it. We've already taken off the brake caliper. We've hung the brake caliper. We have these little S hooks for hanging the brake caliper on the suspension or wherever we can hang it, because we don't want the caliper to hang by the hoses themselves, because we can damage the hoses. Okay. First off, we make sure there's no rust on the backside. There's no rust on the inside of our rotor. We clean that up if we need to clean that up. We have a rotor on there. We need to find the correct adapter for the vehicle. Okay. Once we find the correct adapter, we come to our kit. It's the lug nut kit. And in our lug nut kit has different fasteners for different types of vehicles. So we find the one that's going to work for us. We're going to put our adapter onto our rotor, push it all the way on, tapered side of the lug nut in. We are going to screw these guys in by hand. We're going to take our ratchet. We're not going to tighten these with an air gun, okay? You can damage the adapter. We can warp the rotors more, things like that. So we always screw these on by hand. You still go in a star pattern just like you would with any lug nut, okay? And we're just going to tighten these things down. Okay. Once they're snug, we check it, make sure everything feels good, it's not loose. There's an alignment pin on here, which is going to line up with our alignment holes inside the machine. This machine will raise and lower for the height of the vehicle that you're working on. So we push it down. We line it up. We have to get our pins in there, and then we spin the center. There we go. Lined up the rest of the way. Tighten this guy in there. Don't ever force this on there because you don't need to. Just snug it up. It doesn't need to be super tight. Okay? We're going to turn on our machine, make sure everything's going. We're going to make sure that this has been reset. And what we're going to do is we're going to push our start button here. When we hit our start button, you're going to hear it clicking. And what it's doing is compensating for the run out that could be in our rotors, our bearings, our spindle, our hub, what have you. Okay? Then once we have two green lights, that means we are good to cut here. Okay? So, with that, we're going to take our machine, we're going to screw this counterclockwise to bring the head of the machine in. You might have to open up our cutting bits a little bit. We're going to screw this about halfway down our rotor. Once we're about halfway into the rotor, that's generally the thinnest part of the rotor, we're going to slowly turn in our cutting heads one at a time. And we're going to listen for when we just start to hit. As soon as we just start to hit the rotor on one side, we'll do the other side. So, there you go. Make sure this is loose. This is our tightener for tightening up the cutting bits. We're going to screw that guy all the way in to almost where the hat of the rotor is. Alrighty, and once we're there, we're going to turn these things in another about 2 thousandths in. Then we're going to tighten this here up. Once that is tight, we have to grab our anti-rattle clips. We're going to slip these in here. And we're going to put that on
here, and that's going to help the chatter, and it's also going to help the cutting bits so they don't rattle and make a lot of noise. We pop this pin in here, and eventually it'll get in there. So while this is cutting, let's go over some of the features we have here. So again, we have our anti-rattle pads on. This is tight. This is our adjusters for adjusting the heads. This knob here will loosen the head assembly so we can pivot it or slide it back and forth to whatever depth rotor that we're working on. Okay? Come to the back of the machine here. We have our lock here to lock it in place so it doesn't pivot. Of course, you've already seen all the controls. Then in here, this is some of the toolkit. And this is the toolkit. It's got a cleaner, adjusters, a little bit of tools in here to do a little maintenance on the machine. We've got lube here for the slide. We've got extra cutting bits in here. We've got extra anti-rattle bits depending on what we're using them for. Of course, our S-hooks. Down here in the bottom, we have all of our adapters for the different kinds of vehicles, whether it's, the 8 lugs, 6 lugs, 5 lugs, and so on. Okay. Then we've got our lug nut kit here. Has the different lug nuts for the different kinds of vehicles, so that we can put our adapters on. Because a lot of times the stock lug nuts will not work. Okay. All right. We have more brake tools here, just so you're aware, for compressing calipers, checking run out. We can always check run out and stuff like that on our rotors. We have more tools in here. There's for checking thicknesses, more bits and everything for lug nuts. Just a lot more parts here. These are for doing our non-directional finish. Okay. And so on, which I have that right over here. Okay. So there's our tool for a non-directional finish. So we come back over to here. Let's take a look at our cutting bits here. You can see the line that it's cutting in here on the outside of the rotor and on the inside of the rotor. Okay. So, this is the Pro Cut, and we do this on the vehicle because sometimes we come up with vehicles that doesn't matter what we do, we can't get anything to cut properly off the car. Okay, we have an off-car brake lathe that we'll demonstrate another day. That is for turning rotors and drums and stuff. This is a much better system because it cuts it through to the vehicle. So we get rid of all the brake pulsations. So I have had a 100% success rate with an on-car brake lathe working in the field in the last 30 years that I've been doing this. Okay? So we're almost done. It's almost to the edge of its cutting. And if we wanted to, we can set up our stop limit. So what that does, when it this comes out so far, it hits a button here and it turns the machine off. Okay? That way you can walk off, you can go do other things in the shop. We are just about done. So as soon as we're done here, we're going to do what's called a non-directional finish. So this is almost done. You can hear it just cutting just a little bit. Now it's done. Pull this knob out. Unscrew it the rest of the way out. Okay. Let's get rid of our chatter things here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our die grinder, has our non-directional cutting bit on it. It's just like a big overgrown sander. Okay, all we're going to do, we're going to put a non-directional nice and fast on the outside of the rotor and on the inside of the rotor. Okay. Then what we can do is make sure we turn our machine off. Next we can double check, make sure everything's looking good, a nice smooth cutting lines. We've got a non-directional finish on both sides. We're going to loosen our knob. Take that off. Move this out of our way a little bit. Now what we do next is we're going to do the other side of the vehicle, the turnette rotor. We're going to loosen our brake here, and we can pick this thing up. We can spin this around to where it goes around to the other side, and then we can set up and we can cut the other rotor on the other side of the vehicle. Okay, it's just that simple. Make sure we tighten that down. We just go through the same procedures. Okay, now let's go ahead and get our rotor off of here. Make sure we put the nuts back into our kit because we don't want to lose these. Take our adapter off, and our adapter gets put back away on the side of the machine. Now we can look at our rotor, and you can see our non-directional finish on both sides of the rotor. Okay, and then at this point, all we would do here, we put our brake caliper back on, our new brakes on, bolt the wheel up, make sure we pump the brakes when we're done, and off we're running. So that's it. Pro Cut on-car brake lathe. It's the best way to do brakes.